Oh, yeah. Hello, I'm streaming. And as usual, I'll wait a minute and see if people are still on their way. Gotta get myself lined up. I wrote some more things. Oop, that way. I wrote some more things on the board for what's going on today. I've been playing around with the position of this stuff just because. There we go. Okay, so yeah, hello if anyone's watching. I'm gonna wait a few minutes to see if people get online, and then I'll get started with today's agenda, which you can see here on the screen on the whiteboard. I've got the monitor up here so I can keep an eye on conversation. Oh, I had a question. Oh, no, I did. Okay, great. So we got some people already saying hello and clearly working on their website, so that's great. But yeah, I'll give it a minute before I get into anything serious. Hope you're all doing well. Hope things are making sense so far in the class. I'm wondering if I have time to get a drink before we start. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Great, so here's what we're going to do. I see 7 viewers now, so I think that's a good enough number to get started with. I just needed to get some water to kind of, it's not, I like having something to drink. Today we're going to continue some of the things I started on yesterday in terms of the setting up your website stuff, and also go through a little bit more about the structure of the class, because I didn't want to get too bogged down in details yesterday, but now I do want to get a little bit into them, maybe not bogged down, hopefully, but we'll see. And I wrote a few of those things on the board here just to help remind myself what to cover today. So I'm going to talk about some general expectations for the class, a little bit about how the grading is going to work and how the weekly reports are going to fit into that. Then I'm going to get into some detail about setting up your domain, and I added a lot of notes for that in Canvas, so maybe you've already had a chance to look at that. But if not, you can look at that later as another explanation of the same kind of thing I'm going to talk about today. And then talk about something I'm calling a code of conduct, or maybe terms of use would be a better word. I go back and forth between those two ways of categorizing it, but I want to make sure we have a conversation about how we're building a community in this class and the expectations we have for each other. So the things I expect from you, the things you expect from each other, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page about that. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the ways that we can support each other through this online class. So something I don't think I made very clear, I don't know if I did or not, but in terms of general expectations for this class, I am thinking of it like it is a summer class, and I have taught a face-to-face version of this class over the summer. It's 5 weeks, and the way it's normally scheduled in a face-to-face class is you meet for about 2 hours, 4 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, about 2 hours each of those days, and that's it. So you always have Fridays off. Some weeks, like next week, I think they have Monday off because it's Memorial Day, and so then that day is made up on the Friday of that week. So it's it varies, but I think of this in terms of 4 days of content. So I'm going to be I plan on doing these streams 4 days a week. So this is Tuesday, I'll do one Wednesday, one Thursday. Again, I'll do these at 2 o'clock again, because that seems to be a time that many of you are available. But if it turns out that many of you would prefer a different time, then we'll find out. I'll send out another survey by the end of this week to get a sense of that. If there is a better time, I would actually prefer doing things earlier, but I want to do whatever works for you all. So if it's okay to keep doing it at 2, then I'm okay to do that at 2. By the way, as always, let me know if you have any questions while I'm talking or any issues with the audio or video quality. It seemed to go okay yesterday, at least from what I heard and what I saw later in playing back the video. So let me know if you have any issues. Bear in mind, I'm about to switch to the other screen where the live stream chat screen, that live stream chat channel from our Slack workspace will be visible. So if you would rather not have your identity show up there, then send me, and you do have a question, you can send me a message either through DM, or you could use the Twitch chat if you'd rather use that. I have both of those open. But the Twitch chat won't be visible in the archive video. It will be visible on Twitch if you're looking at it on the website. So just bear that in mind, I suppose. But anyway, so yeah, 4 days of content per week, and that could be content that I'm explaining something, or that you're reading something, or you're trying to do something. This class, even in the face-to-face version, does involve quite a lot of self-directed learning, and so that's definitely the case in the summer version and the online version as well. So in terms of the amount of work that you should expect to put in, about 2 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, but maybe if you have to spread that out over 5 days or 6 days, that's up to you. But that's about the amount of content that I'm thinking of for this class, 2 to 3 hours per day, or about 12 hours per week, spread out however you feel like you need to do that. So that's a lot. And so, wait, did I do that math right? Yeah. At the upper end, 8 to 12 hours, let's say, per week. So it's a fair amount of work. And again, much of that will be self-directed. So in that sense, the amount of time and what you do could vary, and you can navigate that with some choices that we'll talk about probably more tomorrow. But that's something to keep in mind as far as what you should expect to put into this. We can't see each other face-to-face. Normally in a face-to-face class there would be some expectation for in-class participation. Obviously that's not the case here, but I do hope that you'll watch these videos either live or later, and I do hope that you'll participate in class via Slack. That's really important because that's our only opportunity to have conversations that are kind of on the same page and on the same level. I don't really feel like doing a Zoom conference or something like that where we're all talking on video. I just find them kind of awkward, so I'm not super thrilled about that idea, but if that's something that you would like to do, we could explore that as well. Slack does support that kind of thing to some extent, so we might just use Slack for that as opposed to going into other platforms. Okay, so those are just a few general comments about the expectations for class. I am mindful of time. I want to try to keep this at a reasonable length, so I'm going to move into a couple other things. I'll just talk about grading briefly, and then I'll get into some more content. So actually I can go ahead and switch over to Canvas, I believe. Let me just close out a bunch of tabs I don't need before I switch over. I've been trying to do some things in Canvas and continue to be a little frustrated with it, honestly, but here it is. And what I can show you is that I did add this schedule link up here in the top left. What I'm really frustrated about with this is the way that, I don't know if you could even see, but Canvas doesn't let you just put an arbitrary link in there to an internal page. You can, however, put in an arbitrary link to an external page. So what I've done is made this an external link, but it actually routes you back into Canvas. That's kind of, on the back end, you can't necessarily see that, but one consequence is that it doesn't work well at all in mobile. It's kind of visible if you're looking at, it's kind of invisible if you're looking at it on the desktop version, on the web browser version, but in the mobile version, it doesn't work, and that's really frustrating to me that Canvas doesn't let you do that. I don't have a good explanation for why. I've asked them and they've not answered. So anyway, what I wanted to show you is that on this schedule, which hopefully you can find by clicking the schedule link there, or if you can't, like if you're on mobile, if you click on pages, you can go to view all pages and then course outline. Here you can see I've got the daily agendas, and these are just the bullet points for the things I want to try to cover, the main things. And then you can click on a link here to see the actual step-by-step stuff for the day. And so this is today's step-by-step stuff. And I will be spending most of the time today probably going through what's in this notes document and walking you through it. Sometimes people learn better if they read instructions step by step. Sometimes people learn better if they hear someone explain it. Sometimes people learn better if they watch someone do it and then they try to do it themselves. So I'm going to try to combine try to give you content in as many of those different versions as possible. And so that's what's going to happen today. So yeah, this is, I think pretty clear. It's pretty detailed anyway, so hopefully that helps. But again, I want to walk you through what's going on here as far as setting up your website. Anyway, so I was going to show you some things about assignments, which you perhaps have already noticed. So let me explain what I mean by that. So if you take a look at the Hello World assignment, it's a very simple assignment, hopefully. It's simple in the sense that there aren't very specific expectations at all. But what you will notice is that in order to complete this, like in order to actually say hello, you will need to have a website. So you'll need to have a domain, and then you need to have some way of creating content on that website, which is probably WordPress for most people, and that's what we're going to cover today. So this Hello World assignment really has all of that implied or behind it, and this is the outcome, but you can't really get to this unless you've done done those things. One thing I will show you is make sure you send and submit the permalink URL. This is the public URL, and you'll see the difference once we get into WordPress. And then you'll notice here, this is finally the thing I was intending to talk about first, which is grading. You notice this is worth 0 points, and in fact, all assignments in this class are worth 0 points. I am going to grade them, and what I'm going to do to grade them is give them to you in a scale that includes 3 possible, or I guess technically 4, but 3 possible values of check, check plus, check minus. It could also be I think I've set it to be an X or a 0 if you don't submit an assignment at all, but all assignments are due on Fridays. So you can get, and I do allow you to submit them late if you need to, but just try not to get behind because they'll pile up. Anyway, so the idea is that this is what I call a minimal grading scale, or minimalist, I guess, grading scale, and I wanted to keep it simple to avoid nitpicking about A plus A minus, like what's the difference between a B plus and an A minus, and that can be pretty stressful and time consuming for you and me. So I wanted to keep it simple, and in general, a check is good. A check is you did everything I asked and it's successful and it's there. A check plus would mean that you exceeded my expectations in some significant way, or you did something that's really remarkable and worthy of recognition. A check minus would be that you completed the assignment but were missing part of it, or completed it in a way that wasn't totally satisfactory, something along those lines. But all of those are success. Like all of those checks, check plus, check without a modifier, and check minus, these are all meant to be indications that you've been successful. But they're not aligned with a particular grade value, but they are meant to be an indication of, yes, you did it. I will give you feedback at most once per week. We'll see how that goes, but that's the idea, is that if you submit these things on Friday, then I will spend the weekend giving you some feedback on your work for that week. I will talk more about the weekly report tomorrow. It's not due until Friday, so the idea of the weekly reports is that you're going to think back on all you did that week, including participating in Slack and participating on the live streams or whatever, and all the assignments that you did, and you're going to reflect on your work in the terms of the learning outcomes for this class. And that's where the real grading will come in. That's where the actual grade calculation will come in. So that's where you're essentially all along each week going to be making a case for what grade you feel you deserve in terms of the final grade. Even though I don't care for a letter grading system, I do have to use one. I have problems with it intellectually, but it's something that ultimately I do have to give you a letter grade in Banner. And so I want you to be part of that conversation, and that's what those weekly reports are meant to do. So those weekly reports will be your chance to articulate that. I'll give you more details about that tomorrow, so that you can be ready to do that, to do your first one by Friday. So I just wanted to explain that because you might have seen the zeros here and thought that was unusual, and it might be the case. I don't know how many other professors do this, but it's something that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and I found it pretty successful, so that's what I'm doing now. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, of course, let me know, but mainly wait until tomorrow so I can, give me a chance to explain the weekly reflection assignments tomorrow. Okay, so again, if you have questions about that during the stream, you can ask on the live stream chat channel or in the Twitch chat. but let me go back to my agenda. Oops, that's not the agenda. There it is. So I've talked about general expectations, a bit about grading, and the weekly reports, but haven't really said much yet. Just mainly that'll be tomorrow, I think. Okay, the rest of this, I want to spend some time talking about some things that are a bit technical. Well, not the rest, but the next bit. I do want to talk about some things that are a bit technical, and that's why it's useful for me to have, the screen and I can walk through things. So at this point, oh look, I'm almost the same size as the picture of me. I kind of fit. Yeah, I kind of fit right into that. Sorry, okay, the screen is distracting me. I'll probably take this picture off. Now that you've seen me, I don't need this picture on the home page anymore. I feel kind of dorky doing that. Okay, sorry. So this is, oh, by the way, you mentioned, so you remember my son yesterday, he was screaming while we were doing the video. He was fine. We just have a trampoline, like one of those little exercise trampolines, and I guess he was running through the room and didn't see it and crashed into it, but he's fine. I want to talk about domains a bit, and I did talk a little bit yesterday about kind of what they are. I'll say a little bit more today, and also remind you that you really need to get this. If you have not already signed up for a domain, you should do that now or today. No one so far has asked for feedback on theirs, but a couple have shared theirs, and they look fine. So I don't have any. I mean, I'm not too worried about you all making bad choices with domains, but if you do have a question, if you're not sure a domain name is the right one, or if you whatever, then definitely ask. Otherwise, take a look at the advice. I gave you hopefully some pretty concrete recommendations that make sense. But you definitely need a domain unless unless you've already got one. You don't need to sign up for a new one. In fact, you can't. But you're going to need that to proceed pretty much immediately. So make sure you do that. Okay, so I shared in the notes for yesterday a video kind of explaining what a domain is, but another way to think of it is like an entry in a phone book, and except it's in reverse. So like maybe you don't even know what a phone book is. I don't know if people use those anymore, but a phone book is, or used to be, like you would open it up, you'd look for someone you were trying to call, you'd find their name, and then next to them would be a number. So then you dial that number and then you talk to them. So I know now we just have contacts lists and we just type whatever, or just tap someone's name to call them. But that's how phone books worked back in olden times. So computers are kind of the same way. Every computer that connects to the internet has a number that it's identified by, and that's called an IP address. And much like phone numbers, it's not easy to just remember every computer's IP address. Like if I want to connect to umw.edu, I don't remember the IP address for that and type that in. I could though, if I knew the IP address off the top of my head. It'd probably take me a few tries. I could guess, but that's not how we do things. Instead, we remember someone's name. So we remember umw.edu. So the way the internet works is this giant database called the Whois database that is like that it is like that phone book. It's a giant database that has entries where umw.edu or google.com or myspace.com or whatever is attached to a specific IP address. And so whenever you type in myspace.com, you go to that IP address. Your computer, your browser goes to that IP address, and then you see that content there. So when we register a domain for you, or when you go out and do it yourself, you are paying to get that entry, or we are paying to get that entry in the Whois database for you. We're putting an entry in that phone book. That's something you have to pay for yearly or ongoing. And that's what I was talking about a little bit towards the end yesterday, that once you graduate, we will transfer ownership to you, but then you will need to continue paying for it on your own. But that can be pretty affordable if you want to do that. Anyway, I'm mentioning all this because that Whois database and the whole domain system is supervised by an organization called ICANN. That's ICANN. And they have certain legal things that they have to do whenever you enter a contract like this. And one of those is they have to verify that you are who you say you are, or that you actually are the owner of this domain. It's a very easy confirmation. It's not a background check or anything. It's just going to be an email that you get from ICANN, I think. It might come from I can't remember what the subject of the email looks like, but you will get an email. You probably already have it. It may go to junk sometimes too, but the email looks kind of sketchy, so sometimes people assume it's spam. but it actually is legit. It's from ICANN. It has something about who is domain verification in the subject line or in the content anyway. Ultimately, there's a link in there, and you have to click that link to say, yes, I am who I am, the owner of this domain. If you do not click that, your domain will be deactivated after 2 weeks. It can be reactivated, but it will be kind of inconvenient if it's deactivated. So keep an eye out for that email. Click that link if you get it. Otherwise, your domain will get locked out. If your domain does get locked out, it gets replaced with a big message saying, here's what you need to do to get it back. And hopefully, that works. But if you have any concerns about that, or if you're not sure a particular email is the right email, then feel free to forward it to me and I can verify if it is the right email before you click something. It's right to be cautious. It's good to be cautious about things. But in any case, this is, I'm going to go into explaining how to set up your domain a little bit more, but just keep an eye out for that email from ICANN about domain verification. Okay, so I already have a domain, or several in fact, so I am going to go here to log in to my UMW Domains account and show you a few things in here, if it's working. Oh, can we do this or not? Oh, I guess I am already logged in. Okay, good. So I have I have 3 accounts. You have one. So I'm going to switch to my actual account here. You won't have this little switcher thingy, but I do. So this is my UMW Domains account, and yours looks very similar. This is Control Panel or cPanel, and this is the software that you use to manage a website. And this is something that millions of websites use. It's a very common way of managing a website. cPanel is something that you will use mainly to install things and update things and uninstall things and do backups. But if you take a look in it, you can actually do quite a lot more with it. We're going to come back to this domains area in a minute, but you can add multiple domains and multiple subdomains and redirects. There is this tool here called Site Publisher. You might be tempted to check that out. I don't recommend it. I would say avoid this. I can talk about why later, but just trust me, ignore that for now. You can do quite a lot in terms of managing your web server, your web account on this server. This is shared hosting, but you have essentially a server of your own it looks like a server of its own when you're accessing it. If you're interested, I mean, you don't have to do this, but I'll just show you. If you go to this thing here, this is called the File Manager. It's kind of instructive. I have a ton more here than you will have at first, but if you look around, you can see that these are just folders and files, and these are special, in some cases, specially named folders and specially named files, and basically those are special to the context of a website, but in its essence, a website is really just a computer that's connected to the internet and other people can access. So just like your computer, your Mac or your Windows computer, it has files and folders on it, and they are in certain places, and those places they're in has a meaning sometimes. For example, everything in public HTML is going to be visible as my home page. Public HTML is one of those specially named things. I have a ton of subdomains on here because I make different websites for different classes. But each of those, for example, demohomepage.dgst101.net, that's another subdomain I have. And these are all the files and folders that create or that comprise WordPress. So you won't ever, or you will very rarely need to interact with WordPress like I'm doing here, but you could. It's just there. It's open source software, and here's the source of it. Anyway, that was just more of an FYI. I don't recommend necessarily getting into your file manager yet, but it's something that we will do later. You can also set up email addresses. I would recommend, like, if you are interested in doing an email address, like as a general contact, I would recommend set it up as a forward to like a Gmail or your UMW address, as opposed to trying to use the mail client on your server. You can, but it's kind of, I find them kind of clunky. You can actually create an inbox and log into it on your domain if you want to. Most of this other stuff is fairly intense, but if you wanted to get into something more complicated, you have a lot of capabilities here. In case you are wondering about some of those capabilities, you may be wondering, if you know a bit about this, you might be wondering about shell access, and we do not customarily allow shell or SSH access for students' accounts unless there's a really compelling reason to. So if that's something you want, then I guess talk to me and I can see, we can ask, but usually that's not granted just because you can do a lot of damage with that kind of access, so we try to limit that access if possible. Okay, actually, so remember I was talking about IP addresses. There's my IP address right now. Not my computer's IP address, but my website's IP address. and it's a shared IP address. I'm curious what happens if I just go to it. I actually don't know. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. There's nothing configured at the root of that IP address. Doesn't matter. Okay. So I'm going to talk now about how to organize your site, and I have to do this a bit. Well, I can do it in live, a little bit more live. Okay, so let's talk about domains. Talked a bit about what they are, the telephone directory metaphor. Let's talk about options you have. So this is a domain, zachwhalen.net. This is my main domain. Boy, I need to update this homepage. This is the thing about home. Anytime you put a date on a homepage, it runs the risk of this happening, which is that gets way out of date. So just, you know, eventually when you think about your own homepage, I would recommend not putting time-specific information on it for the reason that you see here. This is the, oh, we got some spam in Twitch. Okay, well, I guess if you want to buy some followers, there you go. But the, let's see, am I still streaming the right thing? Okay, good. So this is, yeah, this is my homepage, way out of date, like which year, which January is that, right? Yeah, I need to update this, but the point is that this is my main domain, and there's a bit of terminology that can be a little bit awkward if you're not used to it, if you never really thought about it before, but I want to be clear about it. So if you look at the URL, so this is the actual thing I'm using, and I'm using Firefox, by the way. If you're used to using Safari or Microsoft Edge, the way that those display URLs to you can be truncated, and I find that very frustrating, and so I don't recommend using them as browsers. I'd recommend Firefox, Safari, or Opera, a few others, but mainly Firefox and Chrome are going to be much better for other reasons too. But the yeah, so sorry, I saw a comment pop up there. What was I saying? Oh yeah, subdomains and subdirectories. That's what I wanted to talk about. It can be a little confusing because the names are similar, but let's take a look at it here. So zachwhalen.net. If I add a slash here and then I add some folder name here, that's going to be a subdirectory. Now I don't actually have a folder here called subdirectory. I don't have one called some folder. I guess I could look. Well, I don't want to do that. But that's a sub. Oops, not the Google Drive. That's a subdirectory if it goes on that side. So that's something that you can create just by making a folder in your file manager, and that's what it is. Directory and folder are the same thing, basically. But what we're talking about, and what I'm really going to recommend in most cases, is to create a subdomain, and that's going to go on this other side. So let's see, what do I have? Do I have one? I don't even remember what kind of subdomains I have. I might have one here. I sometimes will do like old for a temporary whenever I make a new one. Well, I'll show you next. Actually, I'll show you a live example. So this is getting ahead a bit, but this is DGST101.net, and DGST101.net is the main domain, and any subdirectories of that would be off to the right there. Subdomains, though, would be before it, and you can see I've got a few here already. This is I was demonstrating how to make different things for your homepage, and this is one called Yet Another Homepage Demo, and it goes in front like that. So this is something you can create as many subdomains as you want, but they essentially are completely independent sites, and when you install WordPress or something else in a subdomain, it has no contact with other copies of WordPress that it may exist in the top of your domain. So like if you think of this as your top, like if I put, this is actually WordPress right here, right now. I'm going to be switching that over to Grav, but this is a completely separate, what is this even? I think this is WordPress too. I was just trying out different themes. I'm building this version of the site in a subdomain called new.dgst101.net while I work on it. And I did that in a subdomain, so it works like a regular domain, but it's off on the side and it's not visible unless I send you a link to it. So you have a decision to make. You need to create some way to add content on your website. That's probably going to be WordPress, and that's fine. But you need to decide where to put it. And you basically have those three options. You can put it in, so we'll just use dgst101.net. So in your mind, think of this as yourdomain.com or whatever. You can either put WordPress here or something else, but you can put that here on your main domain. You could put it in a subdirectory called something like that. That doesn't work, obviously. I haven't set it up that way here, but you could make it here in a subdirectory, or you could put it in a subdomain like that. And I don't have that one registered either. But you got those three places. Now you have, you may have other classes you're already blogging for. You may be doing those in the future. So that's something you should consider when you decide how to approach this. If wherever you end up putting your content management system, subdirectory, subdomain, or just on the main domain, you should make sure that it's whatever you decide there makes it relatively easy for you to add another site. So you're in DGST, you're in DGST 101 right now. You might be taking DGST 395 in the fall. You'll probably be blogging again for that. So, when you come to that decision about how to do that blog, maybe you want to keep using the one you create now. Maybe you want to create an entirely new subdomain for that, or maybe you want to keep them on subdirectories. One thing that I think is pretty successful when people do it is make a single. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I haven't asked their permission. I was thinking of student accounts that have student sites that have done this, but I didn't ask their permission to share it, or did I? Anyway, what I was going to say is if you're taking DS-106 digital storytelling right now, which I think a few of you are, you'll be blogging for that. And one way to approach organizing your site is to make a single WordPress and then set up categories in WordPress. So whenever you post for DS-106, you put your post in the DS-106 category, and whenever you post for DGST 101, you put it in the DGST 101 category. So that way it's all there, but it's easy to keep them separate for you and for your professors who are looking at it, and for anyone else. So several decisions to make, and where did it go? Go back to my notes here. I made a diagram of it. It's not a very good diagram, but maybe it makes sense. Different ways you can set up your content, right? So this is, if DGST101.net is the main domain, it has these subdomains, but you can see there's no overlap between those two subdomains, and there's also no real overlap or bleed between the subdomains and the main domain. So it's kind of hard to get your head around it, honestly. I get that, so that's why I'm kind of belaboring the explanation of this. I want to make sure that it gets in there. But in the notes for today, I talked a little bit about some of the pros and cons of different approaches. If you're still not sure, feel free to ask, and I'd be happy to advise. Okay, so one thing I do recommend is don't do both, right? Don't actually do a subdomain and a subdirectory. It's an easy thing to do if you just kind of blitz through the setup, and that's why I went ahead and made this GIF explaining the differences or showing you the differences. So let's say you do decide to put it in a subdomain. Installatron, which is what I'm about to show you, will try to also put it in a subdirectory, and I don't recommend that because it's just extra long, and that's annoying. Okay, so let's get into, I'll show you that step again once we get to it in this demo here. So I'm going to go into my control panel. I'm going to show you how to install WordPress and go through the steps of that. This is something where you may decide to do it a little differently, and there are several points where that's fine, and there's several points where I do have a more specific recommendation. So let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to make a subdomain. This is an account where, I have DGST101.net on this account. So I'm just going to make a subdomain off of DGST101.net just for demonstration purposes. To do that, you have to find the subdomains area in the control panel, which is right here. And you just type it in. So I'm going to, first of all, select which main domain to put this one on or under. Where's DGST? There it is. And I'm going to say demo subdomain for summer DGST 101. So don't make yours that long. I'm doing this just to demonstrate it and also to make it easy for me to find later and delete, because I don't want to use this. I don't want to make this take up my space. But as you can see down here, I don't always remember to actually delete these, but I will try to. So I'm going to go ahead and just create this, and now this is going to create a place on my server to put something. I don't actually have anything yet, but I could browse to it. In fact, I will. So I'm just going to copy this. This is a URL. So if I go to this in its own tab, oh, okay. I may have messed up my DNS cache, and I might need to. That might cause a problem in a minute, but well, okay, we'll see. Hopefully it won't. This is consequences when I went to look at the IP address by itself earlier, and I saw that default page. That's not the default page I should have seen just now. So that may cause an issue later when I install WordPress, but I'm going to proceed anyway. And then if that does, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, so to speak. Okay, so here I am. So I created that subdomain, which is a place. Normally, what you would see if you go to that page, I don't want to load it again, but if you go to that page of just the subdomain that you just created, you should see it say index of and then blank and nothing there. It's an empty directory, but it's a subdomain. Anyway, hopefully this will work. So to install software, we use something called Installatron. That's what I recommend, and it is linked somewhere with the name Installatron. I think it's down here for some reason, like Installatron Applications Installer. But you can also get to it just by going here where it says Web Applications and then clicking on View More or the Featured Applications. Either way, it'll get you into Installatron. And this is what you use to install software. That's why it's called Installatron. And as you can see, I have a ton of stuff here. Just kind of ignore that for now. But go to the Applications Browser tab and you can see all the different things that you can install. And these pretty much Installatron handles the hard parts for you and can make these install very quickly. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of things from development frameworks to different kind of content management things. So quite a lot. The majority of people are using it to install WordPress though, so that's what I'm going to show you how to do. But there are pretty good other things in here too, like Grav. Known is also pretty good. People have had success with that. I used to use Drupal a lot, not as much anymore, but Grav definitely I like a lot. Yeah, some of these though I've never tried and have never really been tempted to try, I guess. But anyway, yeah, let's just do WordPress. So click on the button for it and then take a look at it. This is just explaining what WordPress is. WordPress is a content management system that's designed to be a blog. You can do other things with it, but that's its primary use, and that's why it's a good place to start for your domain. So you click this button, install this application, and you can see here the little spinning thing takes a second, and then it'll actually load it here. Okay, so this is the first really important step. And remember what I was saying about you can either put it in a main domain, subdirectory, subdomain. This is where you make that decision. So let's make that decision here. And I made that subdomain, what did I call it? This is another reason I make really long ones so I can find them. Where was it? One of these long ones. There it is. So obviously, I've got a lot. You will not have as many, but find the one you want. Delete this here where it says directory optional, and you can see how the actual preview of the domain, the location there, it changes. You want to keep it short, so take that off. Okay, so now we have some other decisions to make, and some of these are pretty important. So let's take a look at them. Select the most current version. I recommend a clean WordPress install. Some people go with the student, personal, and professional site because they think, hey, that's what I'm doing. I'm a student and I want to make this a personal and professional site. I would hold off on that because this template that they've created is very, very large in terms of file size, and it's already configured in ways that I think are kind of unwieldy. And I plan to work with the UMW Domains team to make it a lighter weight version of that, because as it is, it's going to fill up about half of your storage quota just before you add content, and I feel like that's too much. So go with the clean WordPress. You'll learn more if you do a clean WordPress anyway. You'll have more fun with it. So everything else except the license agreement, take a look at it if you'd like to. I do recommend you automatically have it updating as many of these things as possible, because that's something that you're responsible for. You're a website administrator now, so you are responsible to keep it up. If you don't, WordPress is eminently visible. Like, it's a very popular way of making websites. So when people figure out how to hack WordPress, you want to stay up to date on that. So I just saw a question come through on Twitch. Do you have to download WordPress for the subdomain too, even if you already have it downloaded? So let's clarify some terminology here a little bit. That's you are not actually downloading WordPress to your computer. You are installing it to specific locations on your web account. And so, and this is from Jessica, if I remember correctly, you were talking about digital storytelling and doing a subdomain for that. If you've already installed that in a subdomain for digital storytelling, that has no contact with any other subdomains or domains or anything else. So if you want to have two separate subdomains, you need two separate WordPresses for that. And they would need to be installed separately. And you would have to go through this process. And it's not technically downloading, it all stays on the server. We're just installing it into a particular part of this server. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to go through this a bit more. So if you have any follow-up, then let me know. Okay, so that was a Twitch chat question. If you have any questions and you want to put it in Slack, I can also answer there. Okay, so administrator username and password. This is what you're going to use to log into your WordPress. You can let Installatron just randomly generate these if you want to, but I recommend making it something that you can actually remember yourself, so you don't have to rely on Installatron to log in for you. So I'm just going to do that and do one of my throwaway passwords. Keep the email address the same, your UNW email address, and I strongly recommend you change the title. You can do it here or you can do it later, but do it so that it's different, because you're going to be submitting these to me and sharing them in Slack, and they're all going to come in and say my blog unless you change it. So make sure you change it to something else. Okay, and limit failed login attempts. Yeah, you should probably keep that on. And I think that's it. Okay, so hit install. Don't want to save that here. And it takes a minute. You can watch it install if you want to, but it really doesn't take long at all. Okay, it says the installation is complete. So let's find out if it actually works. Oh, it worked, good. I was worried that the DNS thing would get messed up, but it works, great. So this is my WordPress installation. This is a brand new website installed with a default theme for WordPress, standard placeholder content, nothing here that I can really, nothing that's personal yet, but it's here. This is good. Okay, so I'll show you how to log into this, and then tomorrow I'll explain more about how to actually work with WordPress and customize it and add content, but I'll just do a very brief explanation of the dashboard and then wrap things up for today. So if you have any questions, oh yeah, no, I do want to talk about the code of content also, code of conduct also. So let me I'll do the dashboard, then I'll get into the code of conduct. So you remember I made that username and password. You can get to the login here by clicking login, or if you'd rather just remember it this way, you can do it like this, where you type /admin and then type in the username and password that you created whenever you were setting it up, and then this is the WordPress dashboard. There's a lot to do here and a lot to show you. I have a lot to show you, but the basics are on the left. You've got posts where you can create blog posts, and there's one already called Hello World. And so to complete the Hello World assignment, one thing you could do is just edit this post and make it your own content and then submit that. Or you could delete it and make a new one, whatever you feel like doing. And that's the idea. Just in general, posts are blog entries, what's going on today. Pages are more permanent kinds of content, like policies or about me kind of things, or your resume if you end up wanting to put your resume on a site. Comments, I'm going to recommend disabling comments, but you can access them and manage them here if you want to. Appearance is where you can change the look of your site by installing different themes and configuring those. Plugins can add functionality to your site. Some of these are very important, like Akismet. I definitely recommend Akismet. Also, you can see I actually have some updates that are necessary, so I'm going to go ahead and update these. You want to keep your site updated as much as possible, and sometimes Installatron will do that automatically. Sometimes it's a little behind, so when you see that show up as available, you should update that. Users, you're probably the only user, so that's really just you, but this is where you can do things like change like how you are represented on the site. Like if you don't do anything, you'll just be represented as admin, which I think is kind of awkward. So I like to recommend change it to something more personal. And yeah, that's about it. There's tools and settings, but we'll get into that some more tomorrow. That's the basics of WordPress. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Of course, this is archived, so you can play that back if you'd like, and I've got the instructions written up in the notes for today for week 1, day 2. So this is what I just walked through is very much what I did here. Okay, so I need to, did I actually correct that link? I hope I did. This is, I wanted to talk about code of conduct. So when we meet in the face-to-face class, we have an opportunity to talk a bit about norms, but also just we kind of have an inherent sense of norms and behavior of how we talk to each other. Let me switch back to the live stream channel. We don't have that always in the online class. We don't have the same social cues, the same body language, the same organizational things that we have normally in the classroom that helps us interact with each other and support each other. And I really want to emphasize that idea of support. So what I'd like us to do is, and I think this will mainly just be a asynchronous activity at this point because I don't want to go on too long, is what I want to do is have a conversation about things that we can do and things that we maybe should not do in terms of a class, in terms of our conversations. One thing I mentioned yesterday was the rhetoric or the language of ease, which I have found can be accidentally discouraging to students. Whenever I say, oh, it's easy, you just blah, 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 that little word just there, because it's easy to me, I say, oh, it's just blah, blah, blah. Sometimes a student can hear that, and then when they try it and find that they can't do it immediately, they can internalize that as a failure, and they can feel bad about it, and then they don't feel successful. So that's an example of a behavioral change that I am trying to be aware of for myself. I encourage you also to think about that kind of language. So to do this, let's just start. I will add more to this after I wrap this up, but let's just I'm just going to make a Google Doc and I'll open it up for editing, and then I'll invite you to contribute to it. So this, by the way, is a little trick. I don't know if you know this trick. I just found this out relatively recently. Whenever you are any web browser, if you type docs.new and then just hit enter, it's going to take you into Google Drive and make a new Google Doc and open it up there for you to edit. So, not that it's that cumbersome to go to drive.google.com, then create new, and then add doc. I mean, that's 30 seconds or so, but I really like the convenience of that, the docs.new. Same thing works, by the way, for Sheets, Google Sheets, sheets.new, or Forms, if you do forms.new. Just a nice little shortcut. And that's a shortcut that Google created with special domains that they've set up a certain way. Anyway, this is, somebody asked was asking how to access that page, so I'm not sure which page you're asking about, so but then you say, okay, so hopefully you found it. Okay, if not, let me know. Or maybe the Canvas page, okay, good. So yeah, it's in Canvas, and it's weird, but I'm trying to make that more visible. Anyways, this Google Doc, we'll call this a code of conduct, and I will kind of seed this with a few examples and then invite you to contribute some thoughts here. There's also a channel for discussing that in Slack, so I'll add this link to Slack in that channel with some thoughts or some prompts to help you start thinking about some things to do. Oh, this is new. What is this? I don't want to do that. Okay, I'll there's a new sharing modality for Google Docs. I'll check that out later. And then I'll share that link in Slack once I figure that out. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap this up. I've been going on longer than I meant to, as usual. So I will archive this on YouTube later. I have to download it, then re-upload it. But I think it will automatically notify you in Canvas when I've uploaded it. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notifications automatically. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to stop then. So I will carry this part of the conversation into Slack, and then you're, of course, welcome to participate asynchronously as you get to it. Okay, well, hopefully that helped. But your main thing for today is that Hello World assignment. So think about, make sure you have a domain registered. Make sure you have a way to add content to that domain today. That's the idea. And if you need help with any part of that, then please reach out. I'd be happy to assist. By the way, I should mention this too before I wrap up. If you do have help and you can't get in touch with me, or you would rather not for some reason, the Digital Knowledge Center is available this summer. They're not doing in-person consultations, but they do have virtual consultations, and they actually just updated their website. This looks great. This is awesome that they have. Yeah, so there's. Oh yeah, this is cool. I'm enjoying their website. I like it. So you can look now. Let's see how they're doing this. Their booking system, it used to be in. Oh, okay, great. Looks pretty straightforward. But they do have. Yeah, here we go. So this is what I was looking for. Different kinds of things you can book an appointment for, and they do have appointments for domain of one's own, which is what we're working on right now. So if that's something that you would like some assistance with, either the registering for a domain part or the installing WordPress part, then I would recommend selecting that tutorial. But of course, just ask me too. Like I can give you the same advice probably. Most of the tutors have taken this class, DGST 101. I think probably all of them have. So they know this assignment, and they know the process of working with domain of one's own very well. So you should check that out. So yeah, yeah, they graduated a couple years ago. I haven't seen them for a while. Okay, good. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. If you have questions, please reach out in Slack or email or whatever method you prefer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow again at 2 for another one of these where I'll talk a bit more about doing things with WordPress. Okay, have a good afternoon. Bye.